News channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's columnist and broadcaster Lizzie Cundy, and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. Good afternoon. It's 1 minute past 4. I'm Bethany Elsey, here to get you up to date on GB News. Several new allegations of inappropriate behaviour have been made against the former Conservative MP, Chris Pincher. 6 claims have emerged just days after he resigned as Deputy Chief Whip and was suspended from the party after allegedly groping 2 men. The latest allegations, which stretch back more than a decade, were reported in several newspapers this morning, claiming he made unwanted advances to male MPs. No official complaints were ever made, and he's denied the allegations. Mr Pincher says he's currently seeking professional medical support, but insists he will remain an MP. The government spending watchdog plans to investigate the Prime Minister's 2019 election pledge to build 40 new hospitals by the end of the decade. It's after the Shadow Health Secretary warned the plans are a waste of taxpayers' money, with many hospitals having alterations or refurbishments instead of being new. Wes Streeting has also criticised delays, with NHS trusts still waiting for funds to be allocated. The British Medical Association is criticising government plans to halt sick pay for NHS staff who test positive for COVID. The decision, which comes into effect on the 7th of July, means workers can no longer take special leave to self-isolate. The BMA is also warning the move will mean many will be working despite being symptomatic with the virus. The Department of Health and Social Care says NHS staff have a generous support, with up to 6 months full pay for sick leave and 6 months half pay, depending on the length of service. 6 people have reportedly been killed in Ukraine this afternoon after multiple Russian missile attacks. The mayor of Sloviansk claims the attacks are the worst shelling that hit the eastern city yet, causing multiple fires. It's as Russia's defence ministry claims to have taken control of the entire Luhansk region in the east of the country. After capturing Lysychansk, Ukraine hasn't yet confirmed the claims.
There is a sense of relaxation in many rear cities now, but the war is not over. It is there. Unfortunately, its brutality sometimes only grows, and we must not forget about it. Brutal hostilities continue along the entire front line, in Donbass, the epicenter, of course, in the cities of Luhansk region. Hostile activity is intensifying in the Kharkiv region.
Israel says they will analyse the bullet that killed an Al Jazeera journalist to determine whether one of its soldiers was responsible. US forensic experts will oversee the investigation into the ammunition. Shirin Abu Akleh was shot in May while covering an Israeli military raid on a refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. Eyewitnesses claim she was killed by Israeli defence forces, something Israel denies. Thousands of Australians have been ordered to evacuate parts of Sydney after torrential rain brought intense flooding. Vehicles have been left marooned and sports fields turned into lakes, with the Met Office warning the downpour will intensify over the next 2 days. The Emergency Services Minister, Steph Cook, is warning the public not to be complacent.
The Hawkesbury and Nepean rivers will rise higher than what we experienced in March 2021, March 2022 and April of 2022. If you were safe in 2021, do not assume you will be safe tonight. This is a rapidly evolving situation and we could very well see areas impacted that have never experienced flooding before.
Tennis has been played at Wimbledon on the middle Sunday of the tournament for the first time in history. British player Heather Watson has been knocked out in her fourth round, whilst Cameron Norrie is preparing for a place in the quarterfinals. The Centenary of Centre Court is also being celebrated, marking 100 years of action on the main court, with previous winners such as Roger Federer making a speech and a live rendition of Summer Holiday by Sir Cliff Richard, who was a guest in the Royal Box. And British theatre and film director Peter Bruck has died at the age of 97. He directed famous names including Sir Laurence Olivier and Sir John Gielgud at venues such as the Royal Opera House and the Royal Shakespeare Company. Bruck was among the first in theatre to focus on diversity in his productions, winning multiple awards across a 7-decade career in the arts. He died in France, where he'd lived since the 1970s. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens now. Let's return to Nana.
So good afternoon. It's fast approaching 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, the Tory party seriously don't need any help from anyone to destroy their chances of being electable the next time round. I mean, they are literally handing their initial 80-seat majority over to every other political party, and the damage is coming from within. I mean, they've had some policy disasters along the way. A lot of these mistakes are ones they're trying to rectify because, to be fair to them, they've had a pretty tough deal, haven't they? I mean, we've had to put up with the constant Boris bashing, much of this coming from the Tory party itself, with a load of help from established media outlets and Keir Starmer, who suddenly went quiet when Beergate came to the surface. Then there's the likes of Tom Tugendhat and others putting their egos before the good of the country, which is collapsing around their ears with illegal channel crossings, a housing and cost of living crisis, etc. And if they think that we're actually going to forget all of this and flock to an unknown quantity as a leader, I think they're mistaken. Fail leaders like Theresa May and Jeremy Hunt putting in their 2 pennies worth. I mean, we've got a string of seedy, unforced errors, losses of one seat after another due to sleazy circumstances, triggering by-elections, a disgruntled public voting with their feet. I mean, who needs an opposition? But even more worrying than the undertone from people within their own ranks is the undertone from the civil service. Appointed to serve and do the work given them by a democratically elected government, some, it appears, want to disrupt the progress of Brexit by being extremely unhelpful. And today, I read that some civil servants are resisting post-Brexit reforms because they cannot imagine life outside the EU. Suella Braverman today told the Telegraph, the Sunday Telegraph, that Brexit offered a great opportunity to peel back onerous rules and bureaucracy to actually help the consumer. However, she claimed the biggest battles in government are with officials rather than political battles. She talks of a Remain bias, which she calls a resistance to some of the measures that ministers have wanted to bring forward. Well, we've seen this sort of behaviour before with those opposing Priti Patel and her policy ideas, making life very difficult. Now, under their code of conduct, civil servants must carry out their responsibilities in a way that is fair, just and equitable, and reflects the civil service commitment to equality and diversity. They must not act in a way that unjustifiably favours or discriminates against particular individuals or interests. The more I hear and the more I see with regard to the noises in government and Whitehall, the more I think that there's a plot to find fault with absolutely everything that Boris Johnson does, designed to unseat him in an attempt to derail Brexit. I mean, the Tory party are literally handing election defeat to their opposition on a plate. And this resistance to get the best out of Brexit, so it appears as a damn squid, is damaging its very progress. And the only reason why maximum damage has not yet been inflicted is because the leadership challenges are so bad and the opposition is so woefully inept. But if the Conservative Party continue to squander their majority, a Lib-Lag pact, in my view, is inevitable. So in the words of arch Remainer Lord Adenis, if Boris goes, Brexit goes. And maybe that's the plan. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. In my Great British Debate, I'm asking, would you sign up for a 50-year mortgage? Now, the government have drawn up plans for a 50-year mortgage as part of plans to tackle the housing crisis. They are cross-generational mortgages, so houses and loans that last so long that they're handed on to your family to keep paying back when you die. The ministers believe the plan will give people the chance of moving into their dream home, as they'll be able to take out larger loans. So, in my Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, would you sign up for a 50-year mortgage? Now, in YouView, we'll be crossing over to America, and former President Donald Trump we're planning to make an unusually early announcement of his plans to run for president again in 2024. The 45th president has told allies he wants to start his presidential bid as soon as this month, and Trump was defeated by President Joe Biden, remember that, in 2020. So it looks like we could be in for an exciting American election. Then at 5, we'll go outside the Dragon's Den, and I'll be speaking to one of the most successful female entrepreneurs to come out of the show. Rachel Watkin is the founder of the multi-million-pound business Tiny Box Company. She's overcome cancer, fire, flooding and IT hack to now owning a company with over 80 employees. We'll talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on The Outside. That's on the way. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel, and today it's columnist and broadcaster Lizzie Cundy and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. Right, so let's get stuck in. Nice to see you, Lizzie. I love that top.
Thank you very much. A bit of a jacket.
It's like got chains going on.
It has indeed.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
I'm here, you know.
Are you? Well, how could we miss you?
Started early.
Oh, yeah, why not? Right, go on then. Let's.
His jacket's nice as well.
This is a recent purchase.
I thought you wore that last
nice.
time.
No. The last one's at the dry cleaners.
Yeah, OK. Right. Anyway, Danny, what do you think then? Civil service, they seem to be putting their noses into all sorts of things. And, we've had all this nonsense. First of all, we've had the Brexit, then we had the virus, then we had the Partygate. Then we had Beergate, but then it all went quiet. And then we've got all these other things. And now the civil service, but they've been doing that for a while.
Lord Adonis is right. Boris Johnson was what got Brexit over the line. And I can't stand the hypocrisy of these high-ranking public figures when they talk about democracy, when they try to deliberately and willfully overturn democracy back in 2018. I maintained at that time, and I maintain today, that had they had a people's referendum, then democracy would have been undermined in this country for generations. Millions of people have given up their lives for a vote. Now, listen, if they want another referendum, that's fine, if there's enough public support. And this is what Adonis is getting round to. He's trying to chip away at the foundations of Brexit, trying to undermine it. So are some newspapers, so are some leading TV and radio show hosts. And it's a collective pool of people trying to undermine it to get another vote. Now, that's fine if in 30 years' time there's another vote, that's fine. That's democracy. But at least we had the first slice of democracy in 2019.
But the worry is the civil service, they're under a code of conduct where they should be impartial. They can speak if they think that something is... they can have a say, but they shouldn't be making life difficult for some of the ministers if they're trying to get things across the line. And I feel that this is... Yeah, they shouldn't be getting involved.
They should not be getting involved at all.
It's
They've
the
got
tail...
no dog in the race.
And it's the tail wagging the dog. It should be the other way around. The dog should wag the tail.
Well, they're getting in the way of our democratic life. They've got no right. Get on with what they do. They're supposed to be impartial.
They're supposed to be in the office.
Exactly, it's supposed to be in the office. But the fact is, as Danny said, we voted, OK? And that was the people's vote, and it was a huge vote. And this is what must happen. And do you really think the EU would want us back? I don't even know if they would.
They want us.
I don't know whether they would.
I wouldn't want to go back.
But look, we voted, and that's what, as you said, we're in a democratic country.
But they're making life so Suella Braverman has pointed out that she's trying to get things done and they are hindering it. All the red tape that she's trying to remove, a lot of the bureaucracy that exists because we're part of the EU. She's trying to make life simpler and easier. And
but we need to get on with it.
Well, we do, but that's what's hindering. They're getting involved. They're
May I say, Boris Johnson isn't helping himself. For example, when we left the European Union, there was this 5% levy, VAT levy, on energy. Now, that was an EU-wide implementation. Now, we're no longer in the European Union. It would be great for people who voted Brexit to actually say, do you know what? Now I'm noticing it because my energy bills are 5% cheaper. He hasn't even done that. Now, he could argue we can't afford to do it. And I would understand that argument. But for the sake of 5%, one of the Brexit benefits, because that bus told us we were going to get 350 million quid a week.
But did you believe that? I mean, listen, I saw that bus and I thought, yeah, whatever. Look, I'm not voting for the extra money. I was voting to really help those in other areas of this country who were seeing their wages just disseminate because such cheaper workforce was available. And also, I didn't like the fact that a lot of the big businesses were taking advantage of the fact they didn't have to pay a decent wage for an external workforce. I thought that was unfair, which meant that we in this country couldn't compete. And I could see that ultimately it's not going to work out well, and we should be training the people within this country to do the jobs, and that will force companies to raise that wage. And that's what's happening. Of course, we've got inflation, but wages have to rise as well.
Exactly. And no wonder everyone's not happy with the high cost of living, energy rises. I mean, it's such, at the minute, there are families, as we say, that just don't know if they can feed themselves. The inflation is going up, nearly could be 11%.
I studied this article this afternoon when I realised what your monologue was. And apparently, when we did the Australian trade deal, Liz Truss said that she met a brick wall of resistance. The Australian counterpart of Liz Truss, the International Trade Secretary, said that even he noticed that there was willful resistance from the mandarins in Whitehall to implementing this deal. Anything to undermine Brexit.
But Boris was there to get Brexit done. Now get it done. It's still not done.
But it's not. What we're saying and what I'm saying is it's ultimately not actually, if you look at it, it's not really his main fault that he can't get it done because there is a resistance. I mean, you saw when Priti Patel tried to, instruct even her the turnback policy, there were those border force and those within the civil service that weren't happy and decided that it was just... How can, these people have existed within the civil service across various governments, so they might have a foothold. And you remember there was a point where they said that Priti Patel was a bully, and but I saw it differently. I saw it that actually there's you might have been there for a while. You might make life difficult for someone. You might make it impossible for them to get things done. Which, so it seems, many different foreign secretaries have disappeared in a very short space of time, and I suspect that's something to do with the civil servants around there because they can all club together. And I feel that there needs to be a real change.
Yeah, there does. There does. And as you said, Danny, we voted for this, and they're getting in the way of our democratic life.
I think Priti Patel was clear to that.
Yeah, she was clear. She was clear.
But of course, that's conveniently forgotten by her critics, which is so unfair. So unfair. There's a pathological hatred towards some of our politicians. Like the people in the media, they're like bunny boilers. They're like bunny boilers. They think that their opponents live rent-free in their heads and they can't remove them from their thoughts.
Yeah, I hear it a lot of times.
But we can't go back to the EU. There will be riots. I think that people will be protesting all over the place.
The democratic vote, then. But we're not going to get that anytime soon.
No, but I hear this whole sort of objection all the time. Even if you listen to various radio shows and things, you hear people and they say, yeah, but even today I was driving and listening to the radio and they were talking about Boris Johnson and giving him credit for control the vaccine rollout. And the person on the other side was saying, well, no, but it wasn't him that did it. It was because and it's like, well, if it had gone wrong, you'd be blaming him.
Yeah.
So if it's worked out, you should be commending him either way. But so that people keep finding objection, and this is the sort of barrier that I suspect a lot of those ministers are up against, and it's almost impossible.
Yeah, it is impossible.
I think they're hardwired differently, some of his opponents. I really do, from the average person.
But he sometimes just is so vague, Boris, he doesn't help himself at times. And I just think in the current moment, well, the Conservative Party is a bit of a shambles, isn't it?
Yeah, but then there's not much alternative, is there? What do you think? If you just joined us, welcome on board. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. You can also catch us on YouTube. You can stream the show live and download everything via our app. Have a look at what's going on here at GB News. Now, after the break, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, would you sign up to a 50-year mortgage? The government have drawn up plans for a cross-generational 50-year mortgage. Now, the aim of it is to help people get onto the housing market, and it comes with warnings of paying more interest in the long term and obviously building equity more slowly. So for my Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking you whether you would sign up to a 50-year mortgage. Send me your thoughts, YouViews at gbnews.uk. Tell me what you think. You can also tweet me at GBNews. I've got a poll up right now asking you that question as to whether you would sign up to a 50-year mortgage. Cast that vote, but first, let's get some weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking showery across northern and eastern parts, but drier further south and west. Here are the details. Starting off in the southwest, and it'll be a fine end to the day with the daytime showers having long died out. There'll be plenty of warm evening sunshine too. Meanwhile, in the southeast, there'll still be a few showers as we head through the evening. Some could be on the heavy side as well. Meanwhile, over in Wales, most of the showers will have cleared away. One or two are still possible, but for many it will be dry and often sunny. Some showers are set to linger across parts of northwest England and the West Midlands through until the start of the night. The breeze will be picking up too, especially towards the coast. Over in the northeast, we can expect a few heavy showers to end the day. The odd rumble of thunder cannot be ruled out either, though there should be some evening sunshine here as well. Across Scotland, it will turn increasingly windy as heavy, showery rain feeds in from the northwest. Heavier bursts could bring 5 to 10 millimetres of rain in some places overnight. In Northern Ireland, any sunny breaks will be quite limited, and there'll be a few showers through the evening and overnight as well. It's also going to turn blustery here. Heavy and blustery showery rain will then feed across northern parts overnight, staying drier further south with some clear skies. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
It's coming up to 24 minutes after 4 o'clock. Good afternoon. If you've just joined us, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, before the break, we were discussing the civil service undermining Brexit. Let's see what you've all been saying about it. Sonny says the plotters in the Tory party know that only Boris Johnson stands in the way of reversing Brexit. Even if the electorate turn against the Tories and Labour are elected, the plotters have still won because Labour and the Liberals will immediately take the UK back into the EU. Yeah, you see, that is the thing. Although they said they wouldn't, but I don't believe them. Marion says the civil service are there to serve the public, paid by the public. If they don't do their job, just as in any other workplace, sack them. Well, you know what? That's if they can get to the workplace, because a lot of them aren't actually going in, are they? You've seen how terrible... I mean, all the delays, passport delays and everything. Barry says people are beginning to realise Boris Johnson is no Brexiteer and never was. Do you think? Interesting stuff. We'll keep your thoughts coming. Now, we've got so much coming up. Next up, it's our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, would you sign up to a 50-year mortgage? Now, extra long mortgages, they're being considered by Boris Johnson. They're seeking creative ways to boost home ownership in the UK. Now, this scheme would actually allow homeowners to pass debt along with their property onto their children. Instead of a nice big chunk of money, you're going to be passing on a nice big chunk of debt. So I'm asking, would you sign up for that? 50 years on a mortgage. I'm joined now by property expert Julie Ford. Julie, welcome. Right, now listen, I've got to ask you, what is your understanding of this 50-year mortgage? Do you have any detail as to how it would work?
I don't have a lot of detail. I mean, I'm sure you've seen in the press, not a lot has really been released from the government. It is, again, just a proposal like we had with the the renters reform a couple of weeks ago. So what we're looking at is something similar to what they have in Japan, where they currently have a 100-year mortgage. It's a possibility that it could help people get onto the property ladder, and more people on the property ladder that maybe wouldn't have the opportunity prior to this. There could also be tax implications, because obviously if you inherit a property, there's inheritance tax. This may not be a thing if you're actually inheriting the debt and the property. So there's lots of pros and there's lots of cons from what I can see. But at the moment, it is just an idea on the back of an envelope. We don't really have a lot of detail. Like with most things from the government, the devil is in the detail. And at the moment, there is just too many unanswered questions for me.
There are too many devils, no detail. Interesting stuff. But you pointed out Japan. And I mean, in Japan, there's one place in Japan where they live well over 100, actually. They eat a lot of purple sweet potato. Apparently, that's the reason. I have purple sweet potato in my cupboards, by the way. It's just in the cupboards. I don't eat it. But yeah, but apparently that's why. But it's interesting that, because if I think work this backwards, the implication that what about insurance then? So your life insurance, because when you die, a lot of people have life insurance to cover the value of their property and other assets. Will that mean that you won't have things like life insurance? Because when you die, say something happens to me, my kids, they should get everything, all my debt for my properties will be paid off via that. I'm thinking about that market of things. What happens there?
Yeah, again, lots of questions to be answered here, and that is a really important question. The same with, what if you don't have children to pass this 50-year mortgage onto? Will you be able to bequeath it in a will to somebody else? The criteria is going to be extremely strict, but they're also going to have to make sure they can't discriminate against people. But realistically, I think it's a really good idea, personally, and as long as everything, the boxes are all ticked and it's extremely transparent for people to understand what they're taking on and what they're passing on, I think it's a really good idea. With regards to life insurance, would that life insurance package then have to be tailored differently so there isn't a payout on death because the debt isn't actually due to be paid up, it's being passed on? Would it then not be life insurance? Would it be a different kind of insurance? Again, lots of questions to be answered here, really.
Lots and lots of questions. Interesting stuff. Well, would you sign up for one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a good idea on paper as we have it now. But I'd certainly want to know a lot more about it, the pros, the cons, once it's actually written into policy. But I just worry that this is another one of the government's ideas of a sticking plaster legislation or idea to try and solve the housing crisis. And I don't think that is actually going to solve the housing crisis. We're still going to need more properties. We're still going to need to help people who can't get the mortgages to get onto the property ladder or be able to rent. So I think it's a great idea on paper, but let's see how it works in practice.
It'll be interesting to see whether, if you don't meet the criteria for repayment, whether you'll be able to pass it on, because that's one of the big issues at the moment. Julie, thank you very much for joining me. That is Julie Ford. She is a property expert. Right, I'm also joined by the Chief Economic Advisor at the Centre for Economic and Business Research, Vicky Price. Vicky, thank you so much for joining me. Vicky, OK, what do you think about this then? A 50-year mortgage, does it sound like a good idea?
Well, in principle, it's not a bad idea at all. And forgive my voice, I've been looking after 2 little grandchildren. I've been losing my voice as a result all day. But what this actually does is it allows one to enter the housing market. Assume we want more people to enter the housing market when we're not actually building enough houses, so prices may go up anyway. But we allow them to enter, forgetting for a moment the deposit that may be required, because from the affordability viewpoint, it's a good idea because you're paying a lot less every month. The reason for that is that if you take a 100-year mortgage, if you take a 50-year mortgage, as against, let's say, a 25-year one or a 30-year one, you repay your capital a lot more slowly. So which means that your monthly payments, unless the interest rates are higher for a longer-term mortgage, and that is possible, but in principle, you should be paying less every month because you're not repaying your capital as fast as you would otherwise do. So that means you have greater affordability. You probably will be paying less than you pay for rent. And of course, it means also that you probably have more money left to spend on other things. So from the point of view of what you may do for the economy, it's good news. On the other hand, for the individual, over a longer term, it isn't that good because the amount of interest you will be paying is going to be much greater overall over the period of the loan than would otherwise be the case. It could be 2-3 times as much. It's actually enormous if you calculate that this carries on and carries on. Certainly, there have been calculations for the 100-year mortgages that they have in Japan, where even, within a few decades of you paying, you still own a very small percentage of your house. So the whole question of what happens when you die, the individuals that may inherit it, may avoid some inheritance tax possibly, they're still not going to own that property. And they're going to own a lot less than would have been the case otherwise if it was a shorter term mortgage.
Won't it also mean that the housing stock will turn over much more slowly? So people will therefore stay in the same houses and there'll be little movement. I mean, won't it literally stagnate the housing market?
There is a possibility. I mean, what is going on in Japan is that people don't look at their houses as an investment. They look at it as a generational thing. It's something they're going to stay in forever, if you like. So there is that issue. But of course, people move a lot here. And what is happening right now is that in reality, the bank of mum and dad, so in other words, the money that is already put aside by parents to help people move homes, is a very significant part of the overall package, assuming, of course, you have the types of parents who can do it. And that is a very significant aspect of what goes on now. And I think where this policy might be helpful is that in a number of cases, of course, above a certain age, you can't find a mortgage or you find it with great difficulty. If those mortgages are such that they're extended, if you like, beyond 70, beyond 80, then it is much easier for someone to borrow and help their children even more than would otherwise have been the case. Because otherwise you go into equity release, which most people tell you is not actually such a good financial idea, but many people still do it. So there are swings and roundabouts, if you like, in terms of the types of policy that might help the younger generation immediately. And that might assist, if you like, the older generation to borrow more and assist the younger generation indirectly. So I think it needs to be looked at. But my suspicion is that it's just a suggestion at present. It doesn't look like it's a particularly serious one. And it all depends on whether mortgage companies are prepared to do it and whether they think that that is actually a sensible way forward and will make them profits in the long term.
Well, and so in a word, yes or no, Vicky, would you sign up to a 50-year mortgage?
I would, but then I would get out of it as quickly as I possibly could when the time is right.
Well, Vicky, thank you so much for your thoughts. That's Vicky Price. She's the Chief Economic Advisor for the Centre for Economic and Business Research. Thank you. All right, well, let's have a quick look at what you've been saying. Elliot says, absolutely terrible idea. How many people want to end up paying off their own mortgage and their parents too? A third generation might even be left with 3 mortgages if something goes a bit wrong somewhere, born into debt and paying it off forever. No thanks. Trevor says whoever takes on these mortgages will never own a house, in my opinion. Sharon says that what a state for a country to get into where a homeowner has so little to pass on to their children. Well, keep your thoughts coming. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, still to come, we'll continue the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, would you sign up for a 50-year mortgage? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster Danny Kelly and also columnist Lizzie Cundy. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. Good afternoon. It's 4:34. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. 6 new allegations of inappropriate behaviour have been made against the former Conservative MP Chris Pincher, just days after he resigned as Deputy Chief Whip and was suspended from the party after allegedly groping 2 men. The latest allegations, which stretch back more than a decade, have been reported in several newspapers today, claiming he made unwanted advances to male MPs. No official complaints were made, however, and he denies the allegations. 6 people have reportedly been killed in Ukraine this afternoon after multiple Russian missile attacks. The mayor of Sloviansk claims the attacks are the worst shelling to hit the eastern city yet, causing multiple fires. It's as Russia's defense ministry claims to have taken control of the entire Luhansk region in the east of the country after capturing Lysychansk. Ukraine hasn't yet confirmed the claims. Israel says they will analyse the bullet that killed an Al Jazeera journalist to determine whether one of its soldiers was responsible. Shirin Abu Akleh was shot in May while covering an Israeli military raid on a refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. US forensic experts will oversee the investigation. Eyewitnesses claim she was killed by an Israel Defense Force, something Israel denies. And tennis has been played at Wimbledon on the middle Sunday of the tournament for the first time in its history. British player Heather Watson has been knocked out in her 4th round, whilst Cameron Norrie is preparing for a place in the quarterfinals. The Centenary of Centre Court is also being celebrated, with previous winners such as Roger Federer making a speech. On TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. We'll get back to Nana in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good afternoon. Welcome on board. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. We are the People's Channel. Right, let's get back to our great British debate this hour. I'm asking, would you sign up for a 50-year mortgage? Now, extra long mortgages are being considered by Boris Johnson. He's seeking creative ways to boost home ownership in the UK. Now, the scheme would allow homeowners to pass debt along with their property onto their children. So I'm asking whether you'd sign up for that kind of mortgage. 50 years. Let's see what my panel think of that. I'm joined by columnist and broadcaster Lizzie Cundy and also broadcaster Danny Kelly. I'm going to start with you, Lizzie. Would you sign up 50 years, a mortgage, death tax?
Yes, indeed, I would.
You would?
I really would, and I think it's great for young people. It gets them on the property ladder. That's what we need. I mean, look, the average price houses, I think, from March is 278,000, in different areas like London, certain areas far more. I mean, how do people get on that ladder? And I think it's a great idea. And look, you've got to remember, people are living a lot older. I mean, look, with science, nutrition, everything else, we are living longer. The average woman lives till 83.
You look as if you would be 71 when you paid that mortgage off. I think you would be 68.
Oh, thanks very much, Danny.
I think it's a great idea, so long as you can overpay. One of the best things I ever did was pay my mortgage off about 4 years ago. When I had a successful month, I would throw a couple of grand at it as an overpayment, and that comes off the actual capital loan. OK, so long as the mortgage providers will let you overpay. What happens, though, if mum and dad die and they've got teenage kids? Does that then mean that who owns the house? Well, I guess it's the building society. But at what point can the children then start to say, well, look, a part of this is mine? You know, I'm projecting ahead and I would like to do... So it's very complicated. I didn't realise that 100 years in Japan.
I mean, that's incredible.
Amazing.
Well, they do live for a while there, though.
But
They do. They live a lot longer.
Why? Because they...
I think it's Okinawa.
But we are advancing
Okinawa.
in medical science and nutrition. We're all going to be hopefully living longer. So I think this is a fantastic idea.
We see it in the car game. I mean, the used car game. We see it in the used car game when people aspire to buy a car. They can't afford the payment over 36 months, so we take them to 48 or we take them to 5 years, 60 months. But so long as you can make that overpayment, and you can do, even on cars, it's vital.
No, I think it's quite a bad idea, actually. I mean, in principle, it sounds great. Oh, it'll be cheaper over a longer period of time, but it will cost you probably 3 times the value of the house itself, rather than double. And the other aspect of it is, as you pointed out, what if the parents die and the children are not of age to pay back the mortgage? What happens then?
Who owns it?
Who owns it? What happens to life insurance? Because life insurance, if something happens to me, my property will be paid off, my children will own it, so they don't have to then have the drudge of the mortgage having to deal with that. So I think there's a lot of things that don't quite add up to me.
But it's very tough for young people now to get on that property ladder, and renting is so mad, so expensive.
But the reason it's expensive is not because of the mortgages. Partly, yes, difficult to get a mortgage, but the reason it's so expensive is because there aren't enough houses. And if they had more houses, then we wouldn't have to come up with these. This is just part of a tiny thing to get people on the property ladder. I think it'll inflate house prices as well.
But also, there's a reason that there aren't enough houses, and that's because this country exponentially has grown in population over the last 10 or 15 years. There are new houses springing up all around the country, and they are selling for the asking price. They are pushing up the prices of the local established houses, because if you've got a 5-bed or a 4-bed and it's 100 years old and someone wants to see a 4-bed or a 5-bed and they're asking £7,500, then all of a sudden that house increases in value.
Well, of course, yeah.
But we
that's
are
supply and
living
demand,
longer.
though. That's supply and demand. That's because there aren't enough houses on there. So when one comes out, everyone goes, oh, my gosh, and then that pushes the price up. So I think this whole thing is almost like a ruse to hide the fact that they're not building enough houses. If they built more houses, then they'll be more affordable, more people would be able to get on there. And I think part of it is the fact that, as you said, the population is increasing exponentially. We've got hundreds of people coming here on a daily basis via the channel, via dinghies and things like that. We are bringing in more people, which is fine if that's what we require. But if we're going to do that, then we need to build more houses. And all these schemes, 100 years mortgage and all that, is no good. If you haven't got enough houses, 100 years mortgage means nothing.
Yeah, but
it's a house. It's a roof over your head.
It makes sense to get on that property ladder, and I've seen it with my own boys how hard it is for them to get on that.
I can imagine as a teenager. As a young person nowadays.
21.
But Nana, what's the alternative?
Well, I mean, first of all, and there's also the criteria that the banks place on people in any case to get a house. I mean, part of the reason why a lot of people can't get the mortgage is because the banks won't accept the fact that they've been paying rent repeatedly and at the right time, on time, and doing more than a mortgage. They won't allow that because they haven't owned something or they don't have enough things in credit or credit against their name. So I think that the alternative is actually building more houses. That's got to be it. Controlling immigration, for goodness sake. Also bringing back things like sort of council houses, which are in effect houses that you may have for hundreds of years in a generation because they're not replenishing the supply. But simply to say, oh, you can have 100 years now to pay your mortgage, whilst it might be great if you have a house, A, you need to have a house first, then that might be good. But then B, it's a debt at the end of the day. Mortgage is death tax. That's what it means. I think if they're going to do that, they need to think it through.
But surely if you can get on the property ladder at the age of 23 and you've paid it off, say, at 73, what is wrong with that?
Well, that means your parents have to die. Your parents have to die, though, don't they, for you to get on there?
No, but they've got to help the youngsters of today.
It will mean slightly less equity in the house for you to pass on to your children, won't it? That's all.
Yeah, that's what it will be.
But who wants to live in their parents' house anyway? No, I think it's a bit macabre.
But that's do you know, I haven't even
thought
thought
of
of that.
House. I don't want to be in that house. It's like I can't wait to get away from it.
I like my mum, so you have to come round for a cup of tea.
I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah.
Because the assumption is that the teenagers are going to... In fact, they're never going to move out.
They're never going to move out. You're never going to get rid of them.
Oh, I love
the whole thing.
I hadn't thought of that.
The whole thing, that's what I mean. The whole thing is so ill thought out. The more you think about it, the more you think, hang on a minute, you actually want the kids to fly the nest. You don't want them to be sort of waiting for you to die so they can have the house. I mean, you know what I mean? Do
you remember that show, Timothy, with Ronnie Corbett, where he never left the house and he was 50-odd and he was still there?
But, you know, in Japan, it's very culturally... there are big differences with how families are in Japan. And it wouldn't surprise me if they're like the Indians and the Pakistanis, South Asians and Asia in general, where kids stay with their parents.
Well, yeah, their culture is very different, so they nurture and look after their grandparents and don't chuck them into an old people's home. I like that, actually. I think it's a lovely premise. But I don't think that, I think that in this country, whilst it's a lovely idea, it's not going to work. I don't want to live in the same house as my parents. I couldn't wait to get away.
Yeah, but if you want to stay in the same area, I mean, in my area, it's 550,000 is the average price of my area, and I would love my boy to live in my area so we can be near each other. But he's never going to be able to do it.
Does he want to live in your house, though, with you?
No, he's off to Australia.
Exactly.
He can't wait to get away from me. But that's another story. But look, I just feel for the youngsters of today not being able to get on. I mean,
if you want them to get on the property ladder, they've got to take a 50-year mortgage at the moment.
Exactly.
Well, no, you might have to release some equity in your house and allow them to find a house to buy, or ultimately the government need to build some more houses and control the immigration and give the indigenous population of this country somewhere to live.
That's a great point, because, Lizzie, you could release a couple of £100,000 from your multi-million-pound West Wing. Just lose a wing. Just lose a wing.
It's not as big as Gary Lineker's, I promise you.
And then
he's got refugees there, hasn't he?
You can tie yourself down to another mortgage for 15 years when you'll be 35.
Right.
And then you can give that dough to your son.
You're giving me more grey hairs here listening to that. Thank you very much.
Well, that's the thing.
Yes, I know what you're saying. But from where I am and having young boys who want to get on that property ladder, I can just see, how will they ever do it? And this is a way forward. This is a way.
No.
And it makes sense to get on that property
But may I
ladder.
just say something slightly controversial?
Just say something quick.
I don't like landlords with hundreds of houses.
Well, they probably don't like you either.
Right. Enough said.
Right. This show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome
I don't know why I've come
British
down
voice to the show. Your opportunity to join in and tell us what you think about the topics we're discussing. Right, where should we go? Should we go to Kidderminster? Oh, yes, let's go there. Let's have a chat with John. John Reid. It was good to talk to him. John, what do you think? Come on, 50-year mortgage. What, is it a good idea, bad idea?
I think it's an absolutely wonderful plan, and I'm 100% with Danny and the young lady you got in there. Yes, I agree absolutely. However, I don't think it's ever going to happen, really. I tend to think that what this government does at regular intervals is throws out a little bit of good news to detract us from the bad news that's floating around. So cost of living at the moment is so high, everyone knows it, and that's what the real argument's about. And I think all they're trying to do is throw something in the public domain that we can all laugh about, joke about, as I've been watching you do in the last few minutes. I don't think it'll ever happen, but I think if it did, it'd be a good idea.
You think? Good idea.
I had my first in 1970 and I've still got one, so,
Well, you don't look a day over 25, John. Thank you so much for joining us. That's the lovely John Reid. He's there in Kidderminster. So you think so? He's agreeing with you guys. I don't think so. I think the bank's the only people that are going to make a fortune out of this are the banks.
But is this ever going to happen?
Do you know what Kidderminster is famous for around the world?
Food, some sort of food. I know it's got to be food.
Carpets.
Oh.
Carpets. Carpet weaving.
Shag pile.
Shag pile. I agree with John. John talks sense.
And
I do. I
agrees with
totally.
the woman there. It's Lizzie, by the way.
I love that he said young.
woman.
Thank you, John.
Fabulous. Well, keep your thoughts coming on that. I've been asking you today whether you would be up for a 50-year mortgage, and lots of you have been getting in touch. Let's see what you've been saying. Carl says, providing longer-term mortgages will push property prices. What a ridiculous idea. There you go. These two haven't thought about it, and neither has John in Kidderminster. Terry Ann says, I think the 50-year mortgage is a good idea. We had a 30-year mortgage. If I had been younger when I bought my house, I would have gone for a 50-year if available. Fair enough. Although selling it might have been what happens then. Jill says, why can't they simply offer 100% mortgages again? Well, we saw what happened with the subprime fiasco. That's what happened there. They lent mortgages to people that couldn't afford it. David says, personally, I feel this is not a solution. This is only a solution to an ever-increasing house prices. This will spur on the next big house price rise. It would also keep people in debt for longer. Dusty says, there's nothing ever gone wrong with encouraging a swathe of subprime mortgages, has it? Yes, I remember that. Build more social housing, not more debt for people to eternally pay off. And I've got a poll up on Twitter today asking you whether you would subscribe to a 50-year mortgage. I'm going to ask my panel. What do you think, Danny? What do you think the numbers are?
78 say yes, 22 say it's a bad idea.
Lizzie?
Well, I'm going to go 68.
Good idea. I'm going to go 45 say it's a good idea. Let's see what it is. 17% say yes, 83% say no.
Wow.
They're with me, I'm with you. Exactly. This is GB News. Yeah, right.
Interesting.
Right. Well, there we go. Panel totally wrong. Well done, guys. I agree with you. It's a ridiculous idea. Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, it's time for World View. And today we are shining the spotlight on America. The former President Donald Trump is rumoured to be poised to declare a 2024 presidential bid. Could we be set for Boris versus Biden round 2? At 5 p.m, we'll go outside the Dragon's Den. We'll be speaking to one of the most successful female entrepreneurs to come out of the show. Rachel Watkin is the founder of the multi-million-pound business Tiny Box Company. She's overcome cancer, fire, flooding, an IT hack, and now owns a company with over 80 employees. We'll talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on The Outside. But first, let's go for a break.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. And now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now it's time for World View, and today we are crossing over to America. Donald Trump may announce his 2024 presidential run in Florida this month, and Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis is Trump's rival for the Republican nomination. So Paul Dudridge is the host of the Politics People podcast, and he joins me now. Paul, right. Gosh, it's all spicing up in America, isn't it? So what's going on? Is it true? Is he planning to declare his bid for 2024?
Well, look, the story really is now we've just accepted that he's definitely going to run. I think we all are on that side of the fence at the moment. It's when he's going to announce it, and this is what's been bubbling up for the last few days. It looks like he is going to announce it. Now, this is most candidates announce a year out from the election. You know, Trump was in 2015 that he announced for the 2016 election. Normally, it's about a year. He's looking to announce 2 years in advance. And the reasons for that, there's a lot of speculation. A lot of it is coming from the power of the DeSantis movement, momentum. In a recent poll, I believe that Trump was 2 points behind DeSantis in Florida. So it's a good time for Trump to announce. The reason, again, if he was a loyal Republican, he would wait until after the midterms. That's, again, normal custom that the candidate would wait until after the midterms to announce. But the warnings are, well, if you do this now, if you announce now, you're going to make the midterms in November a referendum on Donald Trump. Donald Trump loves that. So I think it's looking highly likely that he is going to announce in the next 4 weeks.
And DeSantis, you said that Trump was 2 points in the last poll, 2 points behind. Does it look like Trump would garnish enough support to be ahead of him?
Yeah. Oh, no. Look, it's Trump. Trump is going to be running, and Trump's going to be the candidate. Everything else, DeSantis is massively popular with Florida. Nobody has the same clout as Donald Trump. Donald Trump is practically a religion in the United States. So everybody else is a politician. The one thing I'd say about Donald Trump is I actually would love to see him just not even bother with all this flim-flammery and just recast himself as the Don, if you like, the boss of the Conservatives, because he doesn't need the hassle of being president. It's actually less power than he currently has. But no, there's no chance that any other candidate will beat Trump to be the nominee in 2024. It's the timing and the reasoning why is what's interesting at the moment.
Trump doesn't want to lose. He doesn't like losing, and it would be great if he returns and actually gets in as a second time. Is that the first time that would have ever happened, that a president has gone out and then not been in? Would that be the first time?
No, it's actually President Grover Cleveland did it. Was president, got lost, and then came back. So there is a historical precedent for the president. And so, it definitely could happen. As I've said on here before, and I got in trouble for it, but the one problem Trump would have is if Hillary runs again. And I think that's highly likely. And it's very highly likely because he has absolutely said that she will never, ever run. So I think it's looking like she probably will.
Oh, right, yeah. You don't trust anything Hillary says. What about the confidence in current President Joe Biden? How's that looking?
Former Vice President Joe Biden, yes, he's a historically low popularity, even with his own party. Like I said, I live in Hollywood, California, and I can't find anybody who's ever voted for him. It's an extraordinary thing. Everybody voted independent, apparently. Nobody voted Joe Biden. So it's a done deal. You've got candidates now his own vice president this week didn't. She's been saying that he's definitely our candidate in 24, right up until this week when she said, well, you know, things haven't been decided yet. I'm paraphrasing, before anybody jumps on me. Basically, she is not giving her unfailing support to the idea that Joe is running in 24. I think you can pretty much take him off the table for 2024. I don't think he is going to be the candidate. I think that's pretty much a done deal. So it is the story in the Democrats is who is going to run. And I do believe this is the one downside of Trump running, is that it gives the Democrats an extra year to plan. Because if Trump does announce, he has to, from that point on, from the point of the announcement, he has to declare every dime. He can only bring in small donations, et cetera, et cetera. That's not too much of a hassle, but it does mean that the Democrats can actually build up a war chest knowing who their adversary is going to be in 2024. And Trump's hands are slightly tied in the fundraising capacity.
Interesting. Well, they would have known it would be him anyway. Well, there's another story that caught my eye this week. It was a survey that showed a quarter of Americans say that it might soon be necessary to take up arms against the US government. What's that survey about? I mean, that seems a bit odd.
No, well, this is from the University of Chicago. It's not Ivy League, but apparently it's the next school out of the Ivy League. I looked it up because it's like, this is extraordinary. Yeah, it looks like 25% of Americans think that at some point we're going to have to take up arms and have a second civil war. The one thing I do know is if there is a civil war in the United States, it's probably going to start in my house, because the political divisions just in my own home are so... basically, there's going to be different coloured uniforms in this property over the next 2 years. But yeah, 28% of Americans believe that they're going to have to take up arms to protect or to destroy the Union, depending on what side of the fence you're on. Wow. Everything is so fractious here at the moment. This survey came just after this Roe v. Wade announcement, and so this is compounded. Everything feels so divided and so divisive here that these are now legitimate worries. And the thing is, people are actually drawing maps of what the next civil war would look like, and it's basically everybody in the middle against the coast. So that's that's really it. Yeah, we get Texas and Florida. They get California and New York.
Well, listen, Paul, always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. That's Paul Dudbridge. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. You're watching me. I'm Nana. This is GB News. More to come in the next hour. So good afternoon. It's 5 o'clock. We are live online, on TV and on your digital radio. For the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. Good afternoon. It's just gone 5 o'clock. I'm Bethany Elsey here to get you up to date on GB News. Several new allegations of inappropriate behaviour have been made against the former Conservative MP Chris Pincher. 6 claims, which go back more than a decade, were reported in several newspapers this morning, accusing him of making unwanted advances to male MPs. No official complaints were ever made, and he denies those allegations. It's just days after he resigned as Deputy Chief Whip and was suspended from the party after allegedly groping 2 men. Mr Pincher says he's currently seeking professional medical support, but he insists he will remain an MP. The government spending watchdog plans to investigate the Prime Minister's 2019 election pledge to build 40 new hospitals by the end of the decade. It's after the Shadow Health Secretary warned the plans are a waste of taxpayers' money, with many hospitals having alterations or refurbishments instead of being new. Wes Streeting has also criticised delays, with NHS trusts still waiting for funds to be allocated. The British Medical Association is criticising government plans to halt sick pay for NHS workers who test positive for COVID. The decision, which comes into effect on the 7th of July, means staff can no longer take special leave to self-isolate. The BMA is warning the move will mean many will be working despite being symptomatic with the virus. The Department of Health and Social Care says NHS staff have generous support with up to 6 months full pay for sick leave and 6 months half pay, depending on the length of service. 6 people have reportedly been killed in Ukraine this afternoon after multiple Russian missile attacks. The mayor of Slovyansk claims the attacks, which have caused multiple fires, are the worst to hit the eastern city yet. It's as Russia's defence ministry claims to have taken control of the entire Luhansk region after capturing the city of Lysychansk. Ukraine hasn't confirmed the claims. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the continued attacks are brutal.
There is a sense of relaxation in many rear cities now, but the war is not over. It is there. Unfortunately, its brutality sometimes only grows, and we must not forget about it. Brutal hostilities continue along the entire front line. In Donbass, the epicenter, of course, in the cities of Luhansk region. Hostile activity is intensifying in the Kharkiv region.
Israel says they will analyse the bullet that killed an Al Jazeera journalist to determine whether one of its soldiers was responsible. US forensic experts will oversee the investigation. Shirin Abu Akleh was shot in May while covering an Israeli military raid on a refugee camp in the occupied West Bank. Eyewitnesses claim she was killed by the country's military, something Israel denies. Thousands of Australians have been ordered to evacuate parts of Sydney after torrential rain brought intense flooding. Vehicles have been left marooned and sports fields turned into lakes, with the Met Office warning the downpour will intensify over the next 2 days. The Emergency Services Minister, Steph Cook, is warning the public not to be complacent.
The Hawkesbury and Nepean rivers will rise higher than what we experienced in March 2021, March 2022 and April of 2022. If you were safe in 2021, do not assume you will be safe tonight. This is a rapidly evolving situation and we could very well see areas impacted that have never experienced flooding before.
British theatre and film director Peter Brook has died at the age of 97. He directed famous names including Sir Laurence Olivier and Sir John Gielgud at venues such as the Royal Opera House and the Royal Shakespeare Company. Brook was among the first in theatre to focus on diversity in his productions, winning multiple awards across a 7-decade career in the arts. He died in France, where he'd lived since the 1970s. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens now. Let's get back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of those big topics that are hitting headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster Danny Kelly and also columnist and broadcaster Lizzie Cundy. Now, still to come each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We'll talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And today I'll be speaking to an entrepreneur who managed to secure an investment in the Dragon's Den and has since gone on to build a multi-million-pound business. Rachel Watkin will join me in just a moment. And in the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should we bring back grammar schools? The Prime Minister's announced he's not opposed to grammar schools in principle after reports the government could relax rules on the creation of new selective schools. Now, legislation was introduced by Tony Blair's government in 1998 to prevent the creation of such schools, but I want to ask if this decision should be reversed. You can email me your thoughts, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews. So it is now time for Outside, and today I'm speaking to a business guru. Rachel Watkin, she appeared on the Dragon's Den and managed to secure an investment of £53,000 in her business, the Tiny Box company from Theo Pafitis and Peter Jones. Now, she's since gone on to turn it into a multi-million-pound company and has done so in spite of a challenging upbringing. And I'm very pleased to say I'm joined by Rachel Watkin now. She's the founder and managing director of the Tiny Box company. Rachel, thank you so much for joining me. It looks lovely where you are. God, looks delightful.
Hello. Thank
Is that
you
your
for having
house?
me.
Is that your house?
I am in my house.
I'm in my conservatory.
Oh wow! It looks lovely. It looks very plush. So the Tiny Box Company. Tell us a bit about how you came to be on the Dragon's Den, and why, and whether the company was it set up beforehand. What was the deal?
I had no experience of packaging. I knew nothing about the market. I just saw a niche, and started working with a DJ called Robin Banks. And Robin was very keen to help drive the business forward, but then realised actually he preferred DJing. Didn't want to let me down, so applied to Dragon's Den and didn't tell me. So the first I knew about it was when the BBC called me and said, what would I like the money for? I thought we had less than no chance from having no experience in packaging, never had run a business before, nothing patentable. So, yeah, it was a bit of a shock.
So your company, so the Tiny Box Company, you were there in the Dragon's Den. Which were the dragons? And what was it, a bit of a tussle? We haven't got any clips of it, so I'm wondering, what was it like? Talk to me about the experience.
It was horrific. The only way to describe it. It was a really hot day. We were in the green room all day, and we actually got let in front of the dragons right at the end. And by then, my hair had just turned into a frizzball. All my makeup had slid down my face. So forget the dragons. I was more concerned about being on national TV, looking horrific.
And what did you expect then when you were there? I mean, was it what you expected? And did they, because I think we've got some footage. If anyone's watching on TV, we can see some footage of it. You had Deborah Meaden there. Who else did you have there?
So we had Deborah Meaden, Duncan Bannatyne, Peter Jones, Theo Paphitis, and James Caan.
Right.
And we were in the den for about just over 2 hours, which is then condensed down to about 10 minutes air. And they absolutely ripped us to pieces, especially Duncan Bannatyne. I was accused of being on a crusade, that sustainable packaging would never be mainstream, not something that people wanted or cared about. Fast forward to 2022, and they were quite wrong.
So did they? You secured investment though? Did you not? It's £53,000, as I understand it.
We asked for 53,000, but actually Peter Jones and Theo Paphitis gave us 60,000, 30,000 each for 40% of the company. Yes, they sort of said that because they weren't in the packaging industry, they would forward me the money and leave me to run the business because they thought I knew what I was doing. So it's gone from strength to strength.
And are they still involved in the business, or did you pay them back?
They've had many times their money back, but they're still invested. And yes, I still work with them. It's good.
Wow, that's great. So do you get to speak to them on a regular basis and things? If you need to have a chat with them, you can just phone them up and have a chat.
Yeah, that's basically how it works. If you've got a specific problem or you need help in a specific area, that's what they're there for. You reach out and talk to them and use their experts where you don't have that expertise. So I speak to Peter Jones's lawyer quite a lot. I speak to Theo's right-hand man quite a lot. Depending on what the problem is and what I need help with.
So it was a good investment. You've paid them back many times over. Wow. So I should have asked at the beginning, but so you talked about sustainable packaging. What exactly does the Big Box Company do?
The Tiny Box Company, we will be Big Box soon, but the Tiny Box Company is all sustainable and ethically sourced packaging. So right from the start, we wanted to provide packaging that was ecologically friendly, minimal plastics, and that could be recycled or is recyclable.
I see. And do you provide that to certain clients, different stores? Or are your clients mainly people like you and me who would just be going to buy boxes and things? Is that?
We have a really wide range of customers, anything from people just looking for a box for a wedding or a special gift, right up to much bigger companies that have thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of boxes. And we've got a factory down in Cornwall now, so we make the products where we can in the UK.
Now, you said that you didn't know much about business. You went into the Dragon's Den, you sort of convinced them. What was your life like then growing up? What were you doing before?
I had a very unusual childhood, brought up by 3 parents. very little outside influence apart from the three parents. My parents changed what they were doing continuously. Let's just say that they had delusional issues and, yes, we're setting up multiple businesses. It's just unfortunate that there wasn't the follow through. So we went very much boom, bust, boom, bust. And there was a lot of alcohol, going from extremes of living in caravans to living in much nicer places, depending on how the money was flowing.
Interesting. Wow. So you probably took something from them as probably what not to do, how not to set up a business, and that maybe their mistake was not getting any investors in, and they probably ran out of money all the time. But I'm wondering now. So sustainability, you focused on that. Is there any particular reason why you're focusing on sustainable packaging?
The main reason being that we can't keep burying plastic. You know, we recycle such a short or small amount in the UK, well, worldwide. We're going to run out of burying space, apart from everything else that we're doing to the environment. You know, the microplastics, the ocean, I don't need to explain to people. Everyone's very aware of it. But what I didn't realise until recently was the impact that clothing has. And like 60% of our clothing is also made from plastic. So I'm now on a mission to try and help shake that up as well.
Yeah, that would be good, because it just seems, you know, and people are reusing clothes, they just chuck them out and then get some more. Some of those companies need to really be answering about that. I understand you've got a new business venture now. Tell me a bit about that.
So that is called Chief and Turtle. Turtle, obviously, because of the damage that we're doing to the environment, and Chief because we have been hoping that governments will lead the way, but they haven't been. So we are trying to set up a tribe of people that will help with sustainability in clothing. So we're concentrating on activewear to start with, sports and activewear, and the idea is that it's all made recycled or from ethically sourced materials, organic cotton, bamboo, with minimal impact on the environment. And we don't make it ourselves. We've chosen the best small brands, and we showcase their pieces all online in one place so people can choose the best and know that it is credible, and also choose what sustainability means to them.
You don't source it all from China and fly it here in jets, though? Because a lot of people, they do all that and then they sort of miss the point in the last bit.
First class all the way. No, I'm kidding. Yes, of course we don't. We try and source in the UK where we can. If we can't, we try and source as close to as close to the UK throughout Europe. And we try and practice what we preach all the way through the journey. So there's no plastic used in the packaging. The labels and tags attached are all made from recycled materials. And it's not preaching, it's just showing consumers that there is another way, that you don't have to buy fast fashion. We need to slow it down and make considered purchases.
Well, I'm all with you there, Rachel. Listen, I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us about your business venture. You take care. And
thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Pleasure. That's Rachel Watkins. She was on Outside. She was formerly on the Dragon's Den. She's got lots of new business ventures. You need to go
no worries.
Check her out. She's the managing director of the Tiny Box Company. So, coming up, it is the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should we bring back grammar schools? The Prime Minister has said that he wouldn't be opposed to grammar schools in principle. It's amid speculation the government could relax the rules on the expansion of selective schools. We'll discuss that next, but first, let's get an update with your weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking showery across northern and eastern parts, but drier further south and west. Here are the details. Starting off in the southwest, and here it'll be a fine end to the day, with the daytime showers having long died out. There'll be plenty of warm evening sunshine too. Meanwhile, in the southeast, there'll still be a few showers as we head through the evening. Some could be on the heavy side as well. Meanwhile, over in Wales, most of the showers will have cleared away. One or two are still possible, but for many it will be dry and often sunny. Some showers are set to linger across parts of northwest England and the West Midlands through until the start of the night. The breeze will be picking up too, especially towards the coast. Over in the northeast, we can expect a few heavy showers to end the day. The odd rumble of thunder cannot be ruled out either, though there should be some evening sunshine here as well. Across Scotland, it will turn increasingly windy as heavy, showery rain feeds in from the northwest. Heavier bursts could bring 5 to 10 millimetres of rain in some places overnight. In Northern Ireland, any sunny breaks will be quite limited, and there'll be a few showers through the evening and overnight as well. It's also going to turn blustery here. Heavy and blustery showery rain will then feed across northern parts overnight, staying drier further south with some clear skies. And that's how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
So it's coming up to 20 minutes after 5 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, where on earth have you been? This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. We are the People's Channel. It's time now for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should we bring back grammar schools? Now, the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has announced that he's not opposed to grammar schools in principle. It's after reports that the government could relax the ban on the creation of new selective schools introduced under the Blair government. Now, the Education Secretary, Nadeem Zahawi, has also emphasised his efforts to spread the DNA of grammar schools through the education system. So I want to ask if we need more of them. So I'm joined now by the editor of the Good Schools Guide and Conservative peer, Lord Rafe Lucas. So thank you very much for joining me. First of all, do you support the idea of creating new grammar schools?
Everything depends on what's going on locally, but as a general rule, no. Where we have a lot of grammar schools like Kent, the general education standard is lower. And as has been demonstrated a lot of times by research, you can actually achieve the same result for the bright kids if you put them in a really good comprehensive. And also having the bright kids in the good comprehensive seems to lift all the people below them. So you get a much better overall result if you can manage the education in a comprehensive system than you do in a grammar school system, which isn't to say that the grammar schools we have are not good. There are some excellent schools there. So I'm not an abolitionist, but I wouldn't add more.
Well, why should the really sort of faster kids and talented kids sort of be the things, why should they be expensed? Because it seems it's almost at their expense. If they could go to a grammar school, they could learn faster, they could get more knowledge. Why should they be used as the sort of pin to pull all the rest of the education system up?
I think, again, it's education is such a local thing. I don't want to advance a blanket solution, but I think the likes of Michaela and Catherine Birdle Singh have shown that you can achieve a top quality education without being a grammar school. And a lot of comprehensives that are lucky in having a good intake will achieve the same results for the pupils who might have gone to grammar school, but as they would have at grammar school. It's very much a question of the level of opportunity, the level of ambition, and particularly the level of discipline. If you've got a disciplined, ambitious school, a grammar school is not going to beat it. It's where you have a failing education system and children just not being given the opportunity that there is a role for grammar schools. But we ought, I think particularly with the example of Michaela in front of us, to be looking to see what we can do for all children, as long as we don't thereby do worse for the bright ones.
Well, I think you said it there, because you said if you've got a failing system, then there's a case for grammar schools. And I would say that the system is failing. I mean, I lecture in schools across the country, and the disruptive behaviour, not when I'm lecturing, by the way, they never get away with that when I'm in charge, but the disruptive behaviour that I have witnessed is a lot of the reason why I see some of the more academic kids really upset at the fact that they simply can't concentrate, and they get quite annoyed at the other kids that are disruptive. And seeing as that is the situation that we find ourselves in, surely by your own words, the grammar schools are necessary right now.
Yes, and it is intolerable that there should be that level of disruption in schools. It is not necessary. A good school will not allow that to happen. And it is one of the great reasons why the independent education sector continues to flourish, is that there is so much indiscipline in state schools. And indeed, there is a whole school of thought that indiscipline should be allowed because we shouldn't be being oppressive to the people who are being indisciplined. But I'm a liberal, I'm not a postmodernist. I say it's the rest of the kids who can't. It is possible to create a disciplined school. Catherine Birdle Singh has done it. Others working on her pattern and in the same direction have done it too, and there are existing schools where this happens anyway. But there are an awful lot of schools where the discipline is not good, and under those circumstances, it's very hard to say to a parent, no, there should be no grammar school here, because their children are being harmed by the education we're providing.
So do you think Boris is right then to be looking into that and actually being prepared to open up the conversation again about having grammar schools in, say, those areas that meet the criteria that you've just described?
Absolutely. I don't see any objection to the conversation. I mean, I would always push in the other direction, but at the end of the day, it's the children that matter. But I would do it quite broad. I think you don't need to select just the top 25%. You can run a really good school on the top 50%, and that would apply to a lot of independent schools. You don't need to be ultra selective, particularly in a standard secondary education. If you want something really selective, you go for King College Maths School or something like that. But it's for ordinary kids to say half of you can go to grammar school. Then you've got to really concentrate on what you're doing with the other half, and you go down the direction of university technical colleges or other things that are really attractive and supportive to them. I mean, it shouldn't be all our effort just for the bright kids. It should be, no, the bright kids deserve a proper education, but so do the rest. But that's going to be something different.
I suppose the answer is we need to up the standard of all schools in particular, and that'll see the problem solved. Well, Lord Rafe...
That's what I would do, if I could.
Yes, Lord Rafe Lucas, thank you very much for joining us. Lovely to talk to you. And that is, of course, Lord Rafe Lucas. He's the editor of the Good Schools Guide and a Conservative peer. I'm also joined now by Chris McGovern. He's the chairman of the Campaign for Real Education. Chris, thank you very much for joining me. Now, how do you respond to Lord Rafe Lucas, who suggested that grammar schools stifle social mobility? That's kind of where he was going with that.
Well, look, first of all, Lord Lucas and I come from very different backgrounds. Lord Lucas is Eton, Oxford, House of Lords. I'm inner city Birmingham, outside toilets, failed the 11+, went to secondary modern school. Although I did pass to grammar school at 13. And I think Lord Lucas's views, I mean, his heart is in the right place. But what I would say to him, first of all, avoid the misinformation, he talked about Kent and saying the results aren't so great there and they've got grammar schools. But he should have spoken about Northern Ireland, where they have a full grammar school system, and the results every single year are better in Northern Ireland than the rest of the UK. I'd also point out to him that his own party leader at the time, David Cameron, he told his party conference some years ago now that we have the worst rate of social mobility in the developed world. And that's after 50 or 60 years of comprehensive education. Now, I've taught much of my career in comprehensive schools, and you have got some very good comprehensive schools. Lord Lucas's book, The Good School Guide, tells you where the good schools are. But mostly, if you want to go to one of those good schools, you have to buy a house in the catchment area. And when they appear in Lord Lucas's book, the price of the houses go up. You're 27 times more likely to go to a failing school if you live in a poor area of the country. So if you ask me, do we need more grammar schools? Yes, we need hundreds of more grammar schools, particularly in areas of social deprivation. And we need also, alongside those grammar schools, a new generation of technical schools so that children who aren't academic, but they have a chance to develop their vocational skills. So I think we do need more grammar schools, or at the very least, we need bilateral schools where there's a grammar stream. And don't forget in this argument, when we got rid of grammar schools, or most grammar schools, we also got rid of the grammar school exam, the GCE O-level. And interestingly, that was a tough exam, and we ban it here, but we export it to Singapore. And where are Singapore and the international league tables? Top of the table. So we've got to not only look at bringing back grammar schools, we've got to do what Michael Gove specifically wanted to do, is bring back the grammar school exam for kids who are bright academically. But don't get the idea that somehow if you're academically bright, you're better. You're not, because vocational training is equally important. Engineers are equally important to people like me. I'm a historian. So we've got to get away from that terrible snobbery that grammar school means better. No, it's different. Germany works very well. Switzerland, it works very well. So we need grammar schools. We need choice. And we need to get some fairness back into our system and not have it based on house prices.
Do you know, I did O-levels. I was that last generation of O-levels. What would you say to people that, you know, because you're saying that, yes, we should bring back grammar schools, but taking the 11 plus, which was the thing that would then determine whether you could go into that grammar school or not, at 11 sort of determined your sort of destiny in a way. And some might argue that that's a bit early, a bit unfair.
I'm one of those. I'm one of the 11 plus failures. And even though at Mensa, I think I'm in the top 2%. I'm 11 plus failure, past that 30. I don't like the 11 plus. I think it's probably too early. And it can be unfair. But I think it's better to have some form of academic exam rather than saying, well, what do your parents earn? And can you buy a house in our catchment area? It's not good. Now, in Switzerland, they have grammar schools and they have very good technical schools. It's not based on the 11 plus. It's based on the teachers' or head teachers' recommendations and agreement with the parents. There needs to be movement between the two. I think, Nana, our problem is we somehow think technical education is inferior. No, it's not. And that's the big problem. We've got to have good grammar schools and good technical schools. And comprehensive schools might do that job. In some cases, they do. But perhaps we should be looking at bilateral. We have a grammar school stream and we have a technical stream, and maybe start at 13 or 14.
Yeah, maybe. That'd probably be at slightly later age. And I mean, what do you think about in the UK? Because I remember Tony Blair was talking about like a huge percentage. I think it was 70% of people going to university and things like that. What do you think the landscape would be like if we hadn't banned the creation of new grammar schools in the 90s?
Well, I think, first of all, be more children from poorer backgrounds getting a good education. Back in the 1950s, 2/3 of the children at grammar school were the children, the offspring of manual workers. So I think standards would be higher. As for 70% going to university, a lot of those youngsters are doing degrees which don't lead to employment in terms of their qualification. They're underemployed. I spoke to a conference of admissions tutors, a national conference witnessed by the press a few years ago, and I made this point. I said, if you want to know where your graduates are, half of them are working in fairly jobs which are not commensurate with their degrees at all. Maybe they're working as baristas or whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with being a barista. And, you know, the hall fell silent. But after that conference finished, separately, 3 admissions tutors from leading universities said to me privately, Chris, thank you for saying that, because no one else will tell the truth. And it is true. We have far too many youngsters doing university courses. They need to be doing apprenticeships. They need to be doing practical things, and they'll be happier, and they won't have great debts around their necks, and they'll be in a job. So, yes, I'm not against academic. I'm an academic myself, but I mean maybe 25%, 30%. And let's see vocational training, having a rebirth in the country. And we need these people. We desperately need people who can do practical activities, is my view. And I said I'm old-fashioned, but they say I'm old-fashioned, but I'm not old-fashioned in Singapore. At Singapore, no, Chris, you're modern.
Well, it's true. And my daughter, she used to live in Singapore, and her kids are extremely intelligent, and they're doing the O-levels. Exactly right. Chris McGovern, thank you so much for talking to me. That is Chris McGovern. He's the chairman for the Campaign for Real Education. Well, let's have a quick look at what you've been saying before we go towards the news. Ian says we should be selective, not we're all equal and all the same. Yeah, that's the thing, is it? They have that thing where everyone has to get a prize if they do the competition. No, they don't. Somebody has to win. Warren says we still have them in some countries, and there should be a grammar school in every town and city in the country. That's very true. And, most grammar schools, I think there aren't any in the northeast at the moment, so that's not a good thing at all, isn't it? If we want to level up, we could start with that. Marianne says an entry into a grammar school is generally decided by the 11+, which is, I think, a really unfair way of deciding someone's education. We shouldn't have the same high level of education throughout all schools, not just for the elite. We should, I think she said there. Let's see. Well, listen, keep your thoughts coming. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, we will continue with our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should we bring back grammar schools? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel. Broadcaster Danny Kelly and also columnist and broadcaster Lizzie Cundy. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. Good afternoon. It's 5:33. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. 6 new allegations of inappropriate behaviour have been made against the former Conservative MP Chris Pincher. The fresh claims go back more than a decade, and they were reported to several newspapers this morning, accusing him of making unwanted advances to male MPs. No official complaints were ever made, and he's denied the allegations. It's just days after he resigned as Deputy Chief Whip and was suspended from the party after allegedly groping 2 men. 6 people have reportedly been killed in the eastern Ukraine this afternoon after Russian missile strikes. The mayor of Sloviansk claims the attacks are the worst to hit the city yet. It's as Russia's defense ministry claims to have taken control of the entire Luhansk region after capturing the city of Lysychansk. Ukraine's military says they have withdrawn their forces. At least 6 people are reported to have been killed after parts of a glacier collapsed in the Italian Alps amid record high temperatures. 8 people were also injured on the Marmolada Peak in the eastern Dolomites, according to Italian media. Local authorities say rescue efforts are underway, with the number of victims expected to rise. And British theatre and film director Peter Bruck has died at the age of 97. Directing famous names like Sir Laurence Olivier at venues such as the Royal Opera House, Bruck won multiple awards across a 7-decade career in the arts. He died in France, where he'd lived since the 1970s. On TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. We'll get back to Nana in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment. We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Good afternoon, welcome back. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget you can download our GB News app where you can keep yourself up to date with everything that's happening here. I'm Nana Akua. But now let's get back to our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should we bring back grammar schools? Now, the government signalled a possible return to the creation of new selective schools as Boris Johnson said that he wouldn't be opposed to their return in principle. It's attracted criticism from those who say that it will actually damage social mobility. But I want to ask if a return to creating new grammar schools could be good and a good thing for the education system. So let's see what my panel make of that. So I've got with me the lovely Lizzie Cundy and also Danny Kelly. Honestly. Right. Honestly.
He's upset he wasn't called lovely.
Well, there is that. Yeah.
Did I not call you lovely?
No. But you knew that.
I knew that, yeah.
You did know that.
I did know that. Grammar schools. Danny, did you go to a grammar school?
I went to a private school in the northwest. And I got to say, I was such a scallywag. It was a complete waste of money for my mum and dad. I nearly got expelled on my final day.
On the last day?
Yeah.
Why didn't you do it on the first day? I mean, what kind of a scallywag is that? I know, on the last day of school, I'm going to get expelled. You scallywag, you scallywag.
If it hadn't been...
That is funny.
Anyway, so yeah, I left school with nothing. I left school...
He only had one day left.
I left school with absolutely nothing.
My last day, I'm going
to stick it to them on my last day.
I left school absolutely nothing. That hasn't held me back in life. And like Chris McGovern, who casually slipped in, he came from inner city Birmingham to now be part of the 2% group, the brightest in Britain. And he and I are in that same category, of course. I agree with everything he says. Bearing in mind, when I was a kid at school, there was a lot of discipline. So we used to have something called the strap.
Oh.
I knew you'd...
Not that deputy chief whip again.
It's not that sort of strap.
Not that sort of strap, Lizzie. And so, yeah, you would be disciplined. Now, that made the classroom aware of not being such a yob. You're about to laugh at my face again. Now, you don't get that anymore, do you? So how can you discipline these scallywags in schools, and the bright kids, obviously, as you said earlier, Nana, they suffer?
Are you recommending the strap, then?
Liz, would...
The slipper. I did get the slipper at school once. And I did go to a grammar school.
Did you? Oh,
yes,
wow,
yes. I passed 11 plus. But I think education should be a race to the top, not a race to the bottom. And it's an opportunity for those that are clever to really excel and do well. It really is. And if you're not... you don't want to make me laugh.
No,
there's no point sending a less capable student or academic student to a grammar school, is there? I mean, they will be left behind. But if you were academically ready for a grammar school, you can really reach your potential.
What about the notion?
I also went to a convent as well.
I did as well. I didn't go to a grammar school. I went to a convent. But what do you make of the notion that actually, because as Chris pointed out, what about technical qualifications? So when you're younger, instead of just everything being sort of resting on how academic are you, they should be sort of focusing more on your technical abilities as well. Because
of course.
Some people are just technically minded and others are just into books and, that's all they do.
Well, that's it. Some are more, some are sporty, look at, and some are technical, some
people
are
like
academic.
Gary Lineker, sporty people like
Gary Lineker, who should just stick to sport and stop talking, if you don't mind me saying. But listen, but you just have to show what you are good at and excel at and see your potential. And this is what grammar schools will do. And I think it is a great... And look, Tom Tuganak is actually, is agreeing with this as well.
An eating challenge.
Well, I did become a chef, actually, when I was
I thought
18 or 19.
How did you get anything done? Did you not eat everything?
No, I did. I put a load of weight on.
Did you?
In fact, my very first job at the age of 14 was cooking Chinese food in a takeaway in Liverpool, and I got the sack. after about 6 weeks at
Because
the
you
age of
ate it-
14.
Is it because you ate it all?
No, because I just couldn't cook. I just couldn't cook. I later went on to work at some of the finest hotels around the world.
Wow.
That's a lie.
I suppose that would be,
I believe everything.
I suppose that would be a criteria. You've got to be able to cook if you're going to work in a restaurant. Yeah.
No, but I actually really hope this happens, and I think it is, you know. But you can see, if you can't get into a state school, you know, or a private school, sorry, you know, the grammar school can do that for you.
I don't see a problem.
It gives you a chance, if you're really academic, to do so well.
The only thing is, though, because I think I failed my 11 plus, of course I did, but I was actually quite academic, really, but I was more creative and sort of more lateral thinker. And, you know, I felt quite dejected that I'd failed that thing. You know, I didn't pass it, and other people went off to the grammar school, made me feel a bit stupid.
But look at you now.
Well, exactly.
And then
I laugh in their faces
The schools
now.
are having you back to talk.
Well, actually, yesterday I went back to my school, Newhall, a convent school. It was run by nuns at the time, and I did a little lecture, a little story about it, because it was their sort of last week or last night of being, you know, year 13s, they were leaving. And I was talking about, you know, my work on GB News.
Oh, fantastic.
Do you think corporal punishment would help? Not that it's ever going to come back.
No, I don't at all. It was the worst thing. That it traumatised me, getting the slipper. It really did. And
But did you ever do the thing again that you got the slipper for?
Yes, I did.
Oh.
So it didn't really work for me.
No.
I mean, I can't help. I talk too much. That's my trouble.
Well, you got
I was-
slippered
yes,
for talking too
yes,
much.
I did
Did
indeed.
they just get a big slipper out and just go...
It was a nun, actually. They were quite cruel to me.
The slip-
And also, I got I played the wrong notes on the piano, whacked on the knuckles with a ruler.
Yeah.
That was pretty hard.
Some of the most violent people I experienced growing up as a kid in Liverpool were the actual fathers, the robes. I went to a Catholic school, and these were the most violent thugs, and they were the ones who really enjoyed battering you.
Well, you know, obviously, you know, then there are, you know, the church has been known. There are sort of different things that have happened within the church that back in the day, but hopefully they've kind of it's sort of changed now. There's not
But
that
Lizzie
danger
also
anymore.
said with the nuns as well, they were
The
nasty.
nuns were very harsh,
My
really
nuns-
harsh, but very strict.
Our nuns were lovely. My nuns were lovely. They were so kind, and we had. I can remember Sister
They were
Teresa
frightened of you.
at school. No, and we'd sit in her little room, and then she'd play Kumbaya. She'd be playing the guitar. We would all be going, let's go, man.
Your nuns sound great. I started doing deals with the nuns because I thought the only way I could get round them was to do deals.
Oh, talking about deals. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, car deal, not another car
I was
story.
parked up earlier on, and right in front of me, so brazenly, was a cocaine deal.
No,
Yeah, they didn't know I was in the car. I was watching the F1 on the phone.
Dearie me, that's not so good.
We've gone
off topic.
somewhere else.
But can I just say that if we look in Parliament, a lot of MPs have gone to grammar school. I think Michael Gove is one of them. And Tom Tugan, like I said earlier, is really going for this, really wants this to happen. I think it would be fantastic.
I think it is a good idea. Ultimately, anything that improves the standard of education is good. But I think, as Chris said, I like the idea of having sort of technical things alongside that as well for children who are differently skilled, because academia isn't all it's cracked up
Yeah,
to
but
be.
don't hold the bright ones back. That's what
there
I
is
think.
that. There is that. Maybe raise up the standard of all education in all schools, and then we'll...
Listen, more money, time, resources need to go into those schools that are failing, though, don't they?
I wonder what the nuns would say about you, how you've turned out.
Well, they're probably quite proud and quite impressed. Right, the show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome on our great British voice to the show. Your opportunity to tell us what you think about the subjects we're discussing. Right, where should we go? Should we go to... This was actually once voted one of the most boring places in the UK, but it isn't anymore. We're going to Hull. Let's have a chat with Dan Bryan. Hello, Dan. Oh, you're not wearing the hat today. Dan always wears a hat. Today he's not wearing a hat. I didn't...
It's too hot.
Is it? Oh, we haven't been outside. So what do you think, Dan? Did you go to grammar school?
No, I was not academic, and I always say my education started when I left school, a bit like Danny. But what's a debate if everyone agrees, really? But I have to say I agreed with Chris McGovern that you had on about a few minutes ago, and we're just saying the same thing, but I would like to say that in this area we have, as well as technical colleges, and we've got obviously universities. We've also got an agricultural college because we live in an area where there's lots of farming. And within the agricultural college as well, they also teach you hospitality and catering. So I do think splitting education into a lot more different areas really does help kids. And if the grammar school are for the more academically minded, then so be it. I think we should have more of them so that it can relieve the pressure from the normal comprehensives, and the kids that do go to the normal comprehensives then get more attention from the teachers and their education gets improved as well. And also, I will say, just before we go any further, the general consensus of all of this is that grammar schools are somehow elitist and academics are somehow part of the elite. Well, actually the world's changing and there are more and more kids now realising that they can earn a lot more money doing electrician jobs, doing plumbing, doing building, doing joinery, all the skills we once had in abundance, we don't really have anymore. So these kids are earning a fortune when they come out of their apprenticeships and they don't have any debt.
Yeah, that's true. Perhaps the grammar school, actually, we should, in a way, have more grammar schools, but as Chris said, actually have more technical colleges as well. Thank you very much, Dan. Good to see you. Nice to see you without the hat. I might, maybe one day I'll take this off. I'm bald underneath here. I look just like Danny.
Never. But isn't it important to give people the choice? That's what's important, I feel.
My fellow bald brother from Hull speaks a lot of sense.
Some in the middle,
no, yeah, but in a couple of years he'll be like me. My fellow bald brother talks a lot of sense.
But people deserve to have the best options open to them. That's so important.
Well, let's see what you guys have been saying, because lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. I've been asking you whether we should bring back grammar schools, and Mark says, yes, bring back grammar schools. We need elite education systems because the comprehensive system has failed. Let's see what Ian says. My grammar school was started in 1597, and it was a tragedy when it was closed. 6 children from my primary school entered grammar school education and bettered themselves. 5 from a council estate. Well, that was the good thing, wasn't it? That people from all over the country could do well from whatever the background was. Robert says technical schools and vocational colleges are more needed than ever before. And Mark's been in touch. He said the elites in our society, socialists and conservatives, don't want the oiks taking top jobs, so the education system is rigged to prevent this, and the system social mobility. Don't know, is that a word?
Stymie.
Stymie.
Aye, man. Sounds like it's Glaswegian.
Does it?
Stymie.
Like you sounded Chinese.
To sort of suppress.
OK, Stymie. I didn't know that. New word. I've learned something new. Thank you for that. Julie says, Nana, the problem is middle-class people want to keep sending their children to university and want working-class children to do the apprenticeships. How many rich parents encourage their children to do an apprenticeship instead of university? I'll tell you, none. She might have a point there. It's a very elitist thing, isn't it, grammar school? That's why I felt so dejected.
Yeah, but if you're not able to go to a private school, grammar can give you equal to that, can't it?
Well,
give you a chance.
Well, let's move on then. Thank you for all your views on that. Let's move on to another story. Now, this caught my eye because it is time now for this one. An energy firm has said that it would give money to communities in locations where it places fracking sites. So Quadrilla said that if the memorandum on fracking is lifted, it will offer payments worth hundreds of millions of pounds to the areas where extract shale gas, and it's a move which is designed to put pressure on the government to end the ban. So what do you think? Briefly, yes or no? This is a quick one. Should we end the fracking ban and get on with it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Is that quick?
Get on with it.
That is quick. Right.
Get on with it.
Let's move on to Supplement Sunday. Right, so this is the part of the show where we and my panel look at some of the other stories making the papers today. If you've just joined me, I'm joined by broadcaster Danny Kelly and also columnist and broadcaster Lizzie Cundy. Now, Danny, you've got a story from the Daily Mail, You magazine, on the rise of the new garden pest.
Yes, and we're not talking rodents, we're not talking beavers, we're not talking... What's the other one? The black and white thing that's very violent.
Badgers. Oh, I love badgers.
Right, we're not talking any of them. We're talking about kids on trampolines.
Oh.
And apparently, if you're a good trampoline artist as a youngster, you can go actually more or less up 2 stories. Yes. And you can start peeking into the next door neighbour's bedroom like that. Also...
You'd get quite a balance on you. You'd bounce on 3 floors.
Well, Danny, I think you've just broken that chair, just saying.
I actually could hire myself out for my belly to go up and down. So some neighbours are really fed up with kids just every now and again, just looking at them whilst they're trying to watch the telly. Leaf blowers never live next door to someone with a leaf blower. And that's not a euphemism, Miss Cundy. Nobody needs to blow dead leaves into a pile at 6 o'clock on a Sunday.
It's very true. It's so noisy and irritating.
Who invented that? How stupid are you? Would you like to buy a leaf blower? No, I wouldn't.
It's the sort of thing Victor Meldrew would buy.
Sad to have a neighbour that does those.
Karaoke?
Karaoke. One time I was doing my karaoke, I was doing something for the Jeremy Vine show. They asked me to record me singing a Christmas song. And at the end of it, all I heard was bang, bang, bang on the wall from my neighbour. Shut up!
Oh, my God. Security lights are apparently unneighbourly.
Yeah, they're awful. They're awful. Just coming on.
We live in
Yeah, so irritating.
super sprinkling systems. You're a super... You've been in the toilet about 10 times.
I know.
today.
I've had about 10 cups of tea to keep me awake. Excuse me. Don't talk about my bladder. Live telly.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Lizzie, let's move on to Lizzie. Now, you've got some tips from the Observer magazine on how to improve your memory.
Yes, use it. Don't lose it. Do you have the memory of, take heart, let's try and recall that, and I can't? Do you have those moments? Those
I do
senior
that all the
moments?
time. I run up the stairs and I go, why am I here?
Yeah.
So you've got to reverse. So these are all the great tips, but mainly be sure to get enough sleep. And that, you see, that's why I was at a garden
name
party
dropping.
earlier.
Wait for this name drop.
No, there was... I'm not going to name drop. I will, actually. Elaine Page is a dear friend. And I saw her. And I couldn't remember. So I said, darling, meet darling, to my other friends, because I just went blank. And it really is enough sleep. So if you don't have enough sleep, it really can. And this is great, because it's got all the tips that can help us.
Give us some tips.
Well, here we go. This is make dates and events visual.
What does that
So
mean?
you
colour
put
it in or something.
yeah.
I colour everything in.
Yes, so make it and put it, exactly, make it colourful. Use flashcards.
I do that all the time.
Flashcard?
Yes, I do flashcards.
It's not
No,
really
I do
anything.
flashcards because I think of really clever ideas and I scribble it down.
Yeah.
Actually, do you know...
I use notes on my phone.
Yes. Well, my cousin used to do that. Used to just write, have a pad and pen by the side of the bed and write. That's how he wrote yesterday. He wrote scrambled eggs, and it rhymed with
I've never
yesterday.
written anything down.
Well, yeah, they're not surprising.
Never
now.
written
Right,
anything
I've got a story for you now. This one is about breast reconstruction. It's in the new review in the Observer. Now, there's a story, basically, now, the old methods of using breast tissue to reconstruct the breast is obviously silicone or there's a flap technique. Now, the flap technique's a bit more intrusive and takes longer because you take a bit of skin from somewhere else and then you put it over the breast and blah, 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 blah. Then you've got the silicone. A lot of people don't trust those implants at all because they can leak and they have been linked to certain conditions that could be bad for your body. But this is a fantastic idea. It's a tissue-growing implant. So it's like a lattice that they put in there. They use 3D printing to work out the exact shape. Then they create the lattice, they put it into your breast, and then your body regrows tissue around the lattice, and then the lattice dissolves. And then you've got a new boob.
How incredible. That's genius.
Yes, so they're saying in a couple of years' time this could be ready, but they're doing trials at the moment, and the trials are sort of taking place in America, and this is sort of the new way of potentially, generating breast tissue, and obviously that will be something that could then be used in lots of other things. I mean, we do similar things, but this one, they've never really used it for the breast, and actually it's the 3D printing that gives the exact...
Wow.
Sort of, yeah, and they inject it just through there, and then it just grows. It's very clever.
Wow.
That 3D printing really is something, you know.
It is, isn't it?
Could you imagine a 3D printer, you?
Needs a lot of paper.
I was going to say, we haven't got enough paper here.
As I mentioned, I don't know why I drive down every Sunday.
I know, I'm
really
sorry.
don't. I love it.
You can take the stick, Daddy. You can take it.
I love that. When I get a bit older and, obviously in a couple of years when they start to drop, I'm going to go for that lattice stuff.
Well, I might. I've already had mine done, but I like the sound of this. I really do.
Well, because the breast implants you have to keep replacing sort of every 10 years.
Yeah, and you have to... And I've had friends that have had it done that have had real health issues, sadly, and leaking and
When
all of
did you
that.
have your boobs?
All right, that's enough of that.
Well, I'll tell you after the show.
Right, let's see. Well, listen, on today's show, I've been asking, would you sign up for a 50-year mortgage? And according to our Twitter poll, only 18% of you said yes. 82% of you said no. I'm absolutely with you on that. I wouldn't either. I mean, honestly. Thank you so much to my fabulous panel. Broadcaster Danny Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me. And, of course, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy.
Thank
you
you
very much. And, as ever, thank you to you at home for watching. It's been a pleasure, as ever. I'll be back on Friday at 4 to discuss the top stories, but now I'll leave you with the weather. Enjoy.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking showery across northern and eastern parts, but drier further south and west. Here are the details. Starting off in the southwest, and here it'll be a fine end to the day, with the daytime showers having long died out. There'll be plenty of warm evening sunshine too. Meanwhile, in the southeast, there'll still be a few showers as we head through the evening. Some could be on the heavy side as well. Meanwhile, over in Wales, most of the showers will have cleared away. 1 or 2 are still possible, but for many it will be dry and often sunny. Some showers are set to linger